So, socialism again is this step to communism, right? It's meant to teach people how to get to that end goal. So, when we see that transition take place, a few things have to happen. Sorry, I totally forgot about this. A lot of the countries that people use as an example of socialism are not actually socialist economies. So you hear a lot of times politicians will say, when they're talking about socialism, we'll just look at Sweden or Norway, the Nordic countries, but they are not socialist economies, right? If you remember doing that economic freedom assignment, most of these countries fall in the free or mostly free category. So you cannot be socialist economically and have a high degree of economic freedom. They, by definition, don't go together, right? Because if the government is controlling most areas of the industries, that does not translate into economic freedom, right? Because remember, economic freedom is on the side of free market, government control is on the side of command. They cannot go together at the same time. So these countries are actually what we call welfare state, in that they have taken those ideas of economic security, the government programs that we can find in command type systems, and they apply that aspect, but still allow for the private ownership aspect of a free market. So, this is their idea of a mixed system. So, with a welfare state, you're going to have mostly a private industries. So you're going to have a big private sector. Um, but private property is going to be secured through law. There's still incentive for entrepreneurs to exist, to motivate them to come up with new products and to do things better. So you still have that profit motive that exists. They're rewarded for their work. In socialism, it's not about making the most money, right? It's about thinking collectively. And so that profit motive is now gone when you have socialism. So if there is a profit motive, it can't be socialist, right? The government isn't going to be controlling prices. They're not going to have a ton of strict regulation on businesses. So, that idea of the free market, the supply and demand principles are going to exist in a welfare state, and that's going to decide what's being produced and how it's being produced and who's going to get access to it. However, welfare states, like I said, have a ton of government programs that are there to assist people. So if there is any kind of economic problem, the government is already providing assistance through money, through actual programs, through goods, to people to help them. Or they're paying for maternity and paternity leave. So you get paid time off. It could be paid vacations, anything like that, in which the government is saying we're going to give this kind of assistance for these things. Um, you're going to see that happening in a welfare state, and that's not something that you would see in a free market or a capitalist society, because that's too much government providing and getting involved in the economy. So welfare state is kind of in between. Capitalism and socialism, more towards the capitalism side of things, though, because that free market, when it comes to private businesses and goods and services, is important. Okay, so it's really, really important to understand that these countries and any country that values private property, profit motive, individualism, um, uh, free market principles is not socialist. So make sure you're not using those interchangeably, because they are different here. So, like I said, if we are making that transition into communism, a few things would be happening. Now, ideally, right, if we're transitioning to pure communism, the government would dissolve and collectively people would own everything together. So it's not mine, it is ours. And so that's where that idea of private property is gone. There would be no private property, it would be collectively owned. There would be no markets that exist. You wouldn't have to worry about, do I have enough money to pay for these things? Because everybody is here looking out for each other and caring for one another, and everybody would be provided for, because that's the end goal for communism. Now, economically speaking, when we talk about communism, and this is communism as we've seen it applied. So, not pure communism, but as we've seen it applied, this would be an economic system in which the government owns the factors of production and they answer the questions themselves. There would be no private ownership whatsoever, no idea of private property rights, because again, it is collectively ours. And by ours, we mean the governments, they own everything, right? So, mantra for communism is slightly different than with socialism. So, from each according to his ability, you're still supposed to put into the system what you can. You have certain skills, you're supposed to do something with those skills that is going to benefit the collective. You're providing something that everybody needs or wants, right? The difference here is what you're getting out of the system. So it's no longer about, well, I did more work, so I should get more out of it. You're getting out what you need, right? So a family of 10 needs more than a family of 2. And so the family of 10 would get more out of the system than the family of 2, even if the family of 2 is putting in more work, more money, more whatever, right? So it's not about getting rewarded for the job you're doing. You're putting in so that everybody can have what they need, right? So it's again slightly different here. In this case, the public sector owns everything. Everything is nationalized, meaning it is all under the government control. Now, you might own a grocery store in that it is yours to operate. However, you're only doing that because the government has allowed you to do that. They have put you in that position. Like with socialism, it's the government that's providing all of the products that are going to the stores. So when you go shopping for your clothes, that's because it came from a government owned factory, and it's being put into those stores. So it's not like in communism, nobody's making money, and you're just like, you work and then you get things. You still get paid. You still pay taxes. You still run your own business, even though at any point the government can come in and say, hey, we're going to change what you're doing, or we're going to take this from you, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's the government's, right? They own that here. Now, everybody is going to have a job to do. How that's determined differs. The idea here would be to eliminate social classes, but as we have seen it applied, there are social classes that exist, especially if you are part of the government, you're part of the military. None of this applies to you. You get to do whatever you want. Everyone else, it might be regional, it might be based on your education, it could be based on anything that the state, the government decides it to be based off of. So, for example, right now in China, they have been implementing something called a social credit score. So you get points for different things, and then you also get deducted points for things. So, for example, if you are late on paying a bill, you lose points. If you get caught smoking in a non smoking section, you can lose points. There's all kinds of things that you can earn and lose points for. And then based on your credit score, your social credit score, that can mean these are the jobs available to you. Um, if you have really low scores, you can be put on a blacklist in which businesses would check that before hiring. And if you're on that, you don't get hired for a job. They could use that to prevent you from traveling places. So, right now in China, if you don't have a certain score, you don't get to travel anywhere. You're just stuck where you are, right? So, the government in communism can decide how they want to set that up. All right. But they have that ability to do so since they're the ones providing the jobs. They're the ones that own the resources. They own the businesses. They get to make those decisions. All right. Go ahead and go to the next video to finish up today's lesson.